How are you?
I'm doing all right. We got connected. That hasn't happened the past two that I was supposed to do. So
Oof.
that's a plus. um, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a writer based out of the Bay Area. I've been moving around for the last handful of years, originally from Minnesota. But yeah, this I've published a handful of short stories and had some 10-minute plays go up in the Bay Area, but this is my first debut novel. I wrote it in I believe 2014, the first draft, and it have been chiseling away at different edits until now. And yeah, it's now available for pre-order with At This Arts. So definitely a big milestone for me. This is the largest project of this scale I've ever worked on by quite a large margin. So I'm excited for people to get to read it.
That's awesome. And we have the pre-order link in the show notes. So for anybody who's listening, just check that out and you can click and order right there. So, how did you come up with the idea? Well, tell us a little bit about what it's about and then tell us about how you came up with the idea because I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so my book is about the short one that I always tell people quickly is two ghosts and a mime go on a road trip. Uh, so it's my main character, Chelsea, is a woman who passed away 2 years ago by slipping in front of a train in New York. So her ghost has been wandering New York City for the past 2 years. And she finds out that her younger brother is going to be married in at the end of the summer in San Francisco. So she decides that she is going to walk across the entire country to attend his wedding. And she ends up with one of her sort of ghostly mentors, Carmen, walking with her, as well as a homeless woman named Cindrica in New York City, who she performs as a mime in Central Park to make her money, but she is one of the unique people in this world who can see and speak to ghosts. So, yeah, we have kind of this unlikely trio that ends up, yeah, just walking from New York City to San Francisco, and yeah, and you know, lots of adventures along the way. Some based more in the real world, some more in the paranormal sort of ghost world, but yeah, just kind of seeing what they can do along the way. And as for the initial idea, I think it was literally a random prompt generator where I had been clicking around for one just as a writing exercise. And it had something about like a ghost in a road trip. And I had been toying around with doing something with a mime before, just because, well, I've never done mime. That is kind of an art style that is always, or a performance style that has always really intrigued me. So somehow these two ideas, ghost, mime, road trip, or three ideas, I guess, all got sort of squished together in my head. And then I was doing NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, that year. So I was like, okay, I have this Franken idea. Let's see what I can make work for a draft. And yeah, kind of the rest just sort of rolled downhill from there.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a really interesting premise for your story. And I also like the title. How did you come up with the title?
So I remember going through many different iterations of just kind of word salad, but I really wanted the sense of something that a like a ringmaster would say very dashingly, like the da 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 da,
Mhm.
and ended up just sort of cramming together words until something fit. And Triple C is the main three characters. All their names start with the letter C. So Chelsea, Carmen, and Cindrica. And Incorporeal Circus, just kind of the idea of what it would look like if you had a circus that both was for ghosts and was actively involving ghosts. and traveling, just kind of tying in the idea that they're just on a big old walk across the country.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that title.
Thank you.
So your description says lightly macabre. Would you say that that's accurate? With two ghosts?
I believe so. Like, definitely it was important to me that, my main character dies at the end of the first chapter. That's
right.
not a spoiler. So the fact that there was so much just like grief inherent in the premise that, she is going to the wedding of a family she's no longer able to see. So because there's so much grief baked into the premise, it always felt very important to me to try and find the joy in it at all times. And yeah, just kind of capture that sense of, even when you're going through some terrible, terrible things, you find moments to be silly and dumb with your friends. You find things to fill the hours if you're spending a lot of time with people, and most of the time, at least for me, that turns silly or just kind of weird. And yeah, so trying to tie in that like juxtaposition of the paranormal, the horrific, the tragic, with the weird, the silly, the goofy. And yeah, I feel like hopefully the tone isn't a mishmash. Hopefully it finds a nice balance in the middle.
Yeah, I love this whole idea. Like, I really like the idea that, because it's true, like when you're going through something that's really hard, there are still moments where you can find the humor, and sometimes you have to find the humor. So I like that idea, and I like that you're bringing that into your book. So you're in the launch phase right now, which is a little bit crazy, but have you put any thought into what's next?
So I have like a quarter of a draft somewhere for a potential spin-off. And absolutely nothing set in stone yet. It's just sort of been me toying around with the premise. So we'll definitely see if that ends up coming to fruition. I've got couple other projects I'm working on right now. I have I'm on commission for a play with Playground SF, a local a Playwrite incubator program I'm working with in the Bay Area. So yeah, that's been kind of fun, getting to work in like two different mediums at the same time. Plus I am a theater nerd at heart. Definitely a big part of the book is kind of my love letter to the live theater, and sort of the importance of that. So getting to work in that medium sort of in parallel to working on this larger prose project has been really great. So yeah, kind of it's been interesting. I'm at the sort of end of the creative part of the book project and at the beginning of the creative part of another of these two other projects. So kind of tried to get back into that, ooh, I actually have to create now vibes.
Yeah, I hear that. Do you think that being a playwright helps you write a novel? Or do you think having a novel out has helped you with your plays?
I think the fact that I have sort of my background in playwriting has definitely made it easier for dialogue. I like to think I have a pretty natural ear for dialogue, and yeah, I'm pretty comfortable doing the okay, just keep reading the dialogue scenes out loud until they just ring true to the ear. So yeah, I think in a way that has it helped me with my prose writing. As far as how the prose has informed the playwriting, I'm not sure, just because the setup of a theater can be so much more constrained about like, what you can physically have. Honestly, one of the great parts about writing the novel was just I could throw everything at the wall. For they have, settings literally all across the country, or, giant ghost parties can happen at the drop of a hat. You don't have to worry about how that's going to look, how someone is going to bring it to life on stage. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but at the same time, I do think my prose writing has allowed me to, I guess, have sort of more of a holistic view of my playwriting, and being able to do, okay, it's not just what exists here, what does the whole world of that play look like? So yeah, I think they've informed each other quite a bit.
Awesome. So getting back to the Traveling Triple-C Incorporeal Circus, tell us a little bit about Chelsea, because she has to be a kind of an interesting character for you to, because I've never seen it where a ghost travels somewhere for, you know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting kind of idea.
Yeah, for me, it was very important to work with the idea of how, we hear sort of the idea with ghosts is that they have unfinished business. And what would it look like if a ghost went on a journey to complete her unfinished business, didn't, wait for a medium or something to come to her, but someone who realized that she was missing out on these things that were important to her and decided to take very, positive forward action to get there. And yeah, so I think if you want to delve into the metaphor, but yeah, just it was important to me having a woman who feels like she's missing out on these things that her loved ones are going through and are having these joyous celebrations about, and taking real concrete steps to make sure that she can join in on those things. So yeah, it was definitely interesting trying to think, okay, what does the arc look like for a character that's already dead? Part of it is just that since she's a newer ghost, she's kind of the audience's introduction to this world of the dead, that runs parallel to the real world. But yeah, just kind of how do you go about making sure that you don't miss out on these important moments in yours and your loved ones' lives, even when you are in extreme circumstances.
So would you say that she's a very willful character?
I believe so. She definitely has her sort of mentor ghost character, Carmen, who would very much call her a willful character. Or that, Carmen is like, okay, no, this is how you get through the day. This is how you be a ghost. Where she's very much just no, I'm going to walk across the country. I don't care if I spend, 10 days walking through cornfields in Kansas. I'm going to do it. And yeah, so, but at the same time, there's that very concrete goal of my brother's wedding is on this date in San Francisco. I have to be there by then. And that, so it's willful, sort of more in the way that she's just very goal-oriented, almost to the point of stubbornness.
So tell us a little bit about Carmen.
Yeah, so Carmen, she is a ghost who has been dead for about 40 years by the start of the story. And she's someone who, she's gotten into her patterns, that she's like, okay, honestly, one of the things that was the most fun for me to play with sort of figuring out how the ghosts go about their life is just the idea of you don't need to eat, you don't need to sleep, and what do? You have 24 hours in every single day, 24 hours of full awareness. So how do you fill that time without just going crazy? And it's sort of the, okay, they can't really play video games. They can't do anything that would require them to physically interact with things. They can read books.
Come on.
Filled 40 years worth of constant awareness. And I feel like sort of with that as the basis of how Carmen is interacting with the world, it kind of built up that she has very strict ideas of, I go watch TV in someone's house from this hour to this hour, or I go getting into evening, so I start going to concerts. I don't really like this one, so I'll just leave and go to another one. And she's kind of got her own, this is how she copes with her reality, and unfortunately has become very prescriptivist in, this is how I cope, so therefore this is the correct way to cope. And kind of the juxtaposition between her, where she's giving advice and coming from a very well-meaning place, but not quite realizing that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to how to be a ghost.
Yeah, she sounds pretty interesting. So what kind of issues do they come into as they're trying to get to San Francisco? Are there ghosts that have gone crazy because they didn't cope well, or what kind of things are in the way?
Yeah, so without getting too much into spoilers, but we do have sort of two ends of a spectrum of things that can happen to ghosts. There are there's sort of normal ghosts that are just like sort of shadows of what they were when they were alive, and then ghosts that get so caught up in grief and sort of these thoughts of what could have been, what happened, that they become something called wailers, that are just so entirely caught in their own sadness that they cease to be able to function. And then sort of on the other end of the spectrum, we have ghosts that get so caught up in anger, whether it's about the circumstances of their death or just something else about how their lives work, that they become poltergeists. So there's sort of this constant balancing act of how do you stay sort of in your own head without getting too caught up in either grief or anger. And that also ties a lot into the, ghosts like Carmen constantly seeking distraction. So yeah, there are a lot of sort of the paranormal adventures and obstacles that we face, but over the course of the book, but also the fact that they have a human in their traveling group, Sindrika. It becomes yes, there is sort of the spiritual stuff, but also just Sindrika needs to eat. She needs a place to sleep at the end of every night. She, her feet hurt. She can only go so far. So yeah, definitely among the trio, trying to navigate that. How do the ghosts keep themselves busy, keep themselves from sort of getting too looped into their own thoughts while they're still tied to the human realities of someone who has an actual body that's traveling with them.
Mm-hmm. So is Carmen, like, did she just kind of assign herself to be a ghost mentor, or is there some kind of a hierarchy that set her up that way?
So there's not really a hierarchy. There are, you know, some sort of loose ghost societies, but it was kind of a right after Chelsea died. She was sort of wandering New York City in a daze, confused, and potentially, you know, running the risk of falling into one of those. Could she become a whaler? Could she become a poltergeist? And, you know, with Carmen coming across her, being like, okay, this is my charge now. I'm going to take charge of this young ghost and lead her to the correct way to ghost. And, you know, that works really well for a time, but now, you know, 2 years later, and with this specific goal of Chelsea's in play, it's a system that is no longer quite as good of a fit, but they still have the previous relationship, kind of building them into that.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. So would you say that this is kind of a story about grieving? Is Chelsea grieving her life, or her lost life rather?
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's tricky to have, you know, a story about grief from the perspective of someone who's being grieved over. Like, you know, none of Chelsea's loved ones died. She's the one who died.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of, but she has to see how her loved ones are coping with her loss, and see how, you know, people are moving on without her. You know, the fact that her brother is having a wedding that she's not going to be there for her, and you know, her whole family is going to be there. Her friends and loved ones have started to heal and move on, and sort of that sense of, yes, she's happy, but at the same time, you want to be missed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of you want to know that you were important enough to someone to be missed, at the same time that you want them to be able to find joy again. So yeah, it's kind of a story about recovering from grief from the perspective of someone who was the source of that grief, which I feel like was definitely interesting for me to get to explore in this story.
Very cool. So, where can readers find you online?
Yeah, so I have my own website, alannamcfall.com, a WordPress site, where mostly I'm doing updates about shows I have coming up, information on the books, and occasional book reviews for a reading resolution list I have going. But yeah, so alannamcfall.com. Just on Twitter at Alanna McFall. That's ALANNA. I've seen every spelling of my name under the sun. Yeah, and those are kind of the two major ones. But yeah, so check those out. And then the book will be for sale through At This Arts. That's ATTHIS. So yeah, that'll be a great place to get Traveling Triple-C Incorporeal Circus, and I hope everyone really enjoys reading it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
You too.